This is Chronicle on WCVB Channel 5.
Shayna travels off the Maine coast.
We're going to that very nearby island.
When we arrive, we are transported to a time long ago.
The assignment, uncover a forgotten piece of Maine's past.
You aren't supposed to know that they exist, but you're here.
A controversial island community that disappeared forever.
It's one of the few remaining houses that have not been altered in some way.
A century later, the truth reaches descendants.
I was shocked.
It helped us put some pieces of the puzzle together about who my grandfather was.
A lot of the locals actually joke that the island was almost cursed because no one ever built on it after this community lived there.
The secret of Malaga Island, next on Chronicle.
Good evening. The contemporary rock band State Radio and a 100-year-old scrapbook couldn't be more different from one another, yet both figure in tonight's story.
Shayna Seymour puts them together with faded photos and snippets of film to build a mosaic of a harrowing tale from Maine.
Evergreen trees shroud the islands on Maine's New Meadows River. From the shore and the water, the islands look identical, but Malaga Island is different. Buried beneath the brush and under shell beds is the hidden secret of a community that vanished more than a century ago.
It's just such a fascinating story and such a part of Maine history and New England history that nobody knows about.
It's a secret told by this house and the music that once played inside. Charmaine Tripp says Malaga Island was the source of lifelong pain for her grandfather.
He was not a happy man.
Anne-Marie Mahoney learned the island is the missing branch on her family tree.
I think what shocked me the most is why didn't I know? You know, why was this hidden?
Buried here is Elizabeth Darling, Anne-Marie Mahoney's distant cousin born on Malaga Island.
So why did you want to come here today?
I've never been here, and I just think it's important to see where they lie and, you know, what happened to them.
Darling may have looked like Mahoney, fair skin, light hair, or she could have resembled another cousin, Charmaine Tripp. All are descendants of a black man born a slave. His name was Benjamin Darling, and that is where the story of Malaga Island begins.
The captain and the slave brought back the heavy waves, but they were threatening.
Legend has it Benjamin Darling was on a trip from North Carolina to New England with his master. A storm hit as they approached the Maine coast. Seas were rough, their ship wrecked. Darling managed to save himself and his master. As a thank you, Darling was given his freedom.
You should have your freedom, what you have done.
With a little money to start his new life as a free man, Benjamin Darling bought a small island in Casco Bay.
In the early 1900s, the late 1800s, islands were not a place where people wanted to live.
Kate McBrien is chief curator at the Maine Historical Society. She says after buying a small island, Benjamin Darling married a white woman and had children. The family eventually outgrew their home and moved to Malaga. Others joined them, black, white, and married members of the Darling family.
It was not the cultural norm. It was not widely accepted, which is one reason why I think they were on an island. They could kind of do their thing without being disturbed too much. So Malaga was the first place that you really had a mixed race family living, at least on these island communities.
Somewhere off the Maine coast, at the mouth of the New Meadows River, there's an island.
That is mainland Phippsburg that we just left. And we're going to that very nearby island, which is Malaga Island.
The distance between the mainland and island is short, but when we arrive, we are transported to a time long ago.
Did the island look pretty much like this?
This is pretty much what it looked like.
Isn't it beautiful?
So this is it.
This is it. This is where the community lived. There were actually houses, including small shacks. There's a nice cape right up there on the hill. As you can see from the beach too, it's mostly crushed up shell. That's actually what the community used as their foundations for their houses. This right here is part of a clay pipe.
So you're just continuing to find these little hidden gems.
Continuing all of this stuff. You know, at low tide, it's washing away a little bit more soil, and 100 years later, we're finding it.
The artifacts they find tell historians the people of Malaga Island lived a simple life. The members of the mixed-race community kept to themselves for nearly 6 decades. That would change.
Around the turn of the century, the Maine coastal island started to get attention for its tourism potential, its beauty. But many outsiders saw the racially mixed community of Malaga Island as an ugly place.
And it got to the point where photographers went out to the island to photograph what they thought was a very different and controversial community. Newspaper articles started appearing in Maine, Boston, New York newspapers. It was something that people weren't used to seeing. And so more and more attention was brought to the community.
Some, like Captain George Lane, saw images of Malaga and were compelled to take action.
The Lane family was a Christian family from Massachusetts. They felt that it was their mission to help the people of the island.
Tim Sauls is the manager of manuscript collections at the New England Historic Genealogical Society, home to a scrapbook documenting the Lane family's missionary work on Malaga in the early 1900s.
This is the title page of the scrapbook, and it says a history of part of Captain and Mrs. Lane's and their daughter's work among a neglected people on Malaga Island, Maine. The family helped the community by creating a school. They also collected donations for clothing. There's a mixture of children, both races, which was unusual for that time period.
These look like great-looking, well-dressed children here. So where was the idea that they were living under horrible circumstances?
I think a lot of it came from one particular news article, which was refuted by some of these missionaries. This is my favorite part of the scrapbook, where there are letters written by some of the children on the island, writing and thanking the community for their assistance.
I thank you for the very nice blackboard, very truly. That's great.
By accounts from residents and missionaries, all was going well on Malaga. Those on the mainland also took notice, changing the newspaper narrative to one of praise. This article was written in November 1908, and yet 4 years later, the school, homes, and every resident on the island vanished.
A lot of the locals actually joke that the island was almost cursed because no one ever built on it after this community lived there.
So we're told there are several reasons why no one lived on the island after the fact. I mean, one is the stigma associated with the history of the island, and the other is the fact that it's mostly wooded and overrun, really, by poison ivy at this point.
And then in 2001, the Maine Coast Heritage Trust actually bought the island. They put in some hiking trails despite the poison ivy. There are some hiking trails there. Some lobstermen use the beaches to store their lobster traps. But other than that, uninhabited, unused for more than 100 years. It's a remarkable story.
It really is. It's so much more of it to tell. When missing family history comes to light, reactions are complicated.
What did you think when you learned of your mixed heritage?
Years ago in Hartford, Connecticut, Charmaine Tripp heard about a book in which a Tripp family was mentioned. The book, she was told, was not a novel.
Well, and Tripp obviously was intrigued, so she grabbed that little bit of information and followed where it led.
Family photos put Charmaine Tripp in a good mood. She can relive and remember at the flip of a page. She stops at one image, old, faded. It's her grandfather, Harold Tripp, always a mysterious man. Decades after his death, Charmaine is learning more about him, including his birthplace, Malaga Island.
It helped us put some pieces of the puzzle together about who my grandfather was. It was a connection, but it was kind of a sad one.
The Tripps were one of several black, white, and interracial families living on Malaga in the early 1900s. But many mainlanders couldn't get over the fact that different races were living together and having children. The growing eugenics movement only heightened criticism.
Communities like this, eugenicists believe, should not be allowed to exist. That the more that people who are different live together, the more they're going to breed and continue what they thought was something that was immoral.
In 1911, the state of Maine sent an agent to Malaga Island to record observations of the people and conditions.
And he went through and he described all of them in very racist, very disturbing terms, using a lot of language from the eugenicist movement. He recommended that some people should be institutionalized.
I can't imagine the thought process of the people that, decided these people were worthless.
The findings prompted Maine's governor, Frederick Plaisted, to visit Malaga for himself. He didn't like what he saw and decided to do something about it.
The state actually issued an eviction notice to the entire community and said by July 1st, 1912, you need to be off the island.
All 50 residents were evicted from the island. Those who could pass as white easily started new lives on the mainland. For others, it was more difficult.
The Tripp family couldn't find any community where they could go, so they put their house on a boat. And they would actually move between coastal communities, stay for a few months, and then move to another one, because no community would let them stay there very long. By 1914, Laura Tripp, the mother with 4 young children, she actually got very sick because she was exposed to the elements. And while they were tied up at an island, her husband went off to find a doctor, and by the time he got back, she had died. And because of the storm, the children were the ones who were left with her, and they had to lay on her body to keep her from rolling off into the sea. And that's what they remember of their mother.
One of those children, Harold Tripp, Charmaine Tripp's grandfather.
Your grandfather was witness to all this.
Correct. I can imagine how those events would shape, a person. I often wonder what it means to be homeless all of a sudden just because people don't like you, or what it means to just be told you don't matter. I hurt for them. It also makes me realize how amazingly strong they were.
Sadly, the story of Lord Tripp isn't the only tragedy of the Malaga eviction. 8 residents deemed unintelligent by the state were committed to Maine's Home for the Feeble-Minded and died there, buried alongside the bodies of other Malaga residents.
The state didn't want to give anyone a reason to come back. So in November of 1912, the state went back. They exhumed all the bodies from the cemetery on Malaga Island and reburied them at the Maine School for the Feeble-Minded, taking 17 bodies and combining them into 5 caskets.
A small sign placed here in 2008 identified this as a Malaga Island gravesite. But for nearly a century prior, the history of Malaga Island and its people was lost.
You aren't supposed to know that they exist, but you're here. How does that change things?
It's very hard to kind of put it into words, to see the graves and my relatives and my family, and I wouldn't be here without them.
For most of her life, Anne-Marie didn't know she was a descendant of Malaga Island. Her great-great-grandmother was born here. She was also biracial, both black and white.
What did you think when you learned of your mixed heritage?
I was shocked. I think what shocked me the most is, why didn't I know? This is a huge deal, and it's a huge part of history. There's still some people who don't want to talk about it, who think it's still a hush-hush issue.
Mahoney embraces it, learning as much as she can, teaching her children, even visiting the island.
I saw lives. I saw people's lives. I saw homes. I saw children running and playing. I saw people living together, peacefully existing, coexisting, and helping each other.
Reaching out to Malaga descendants on Facebook, Mahoney connected with her cousin, Charmaine.
It's been wonderful. I've stayed in touch with so many amazing people.
We met at this gathering, sort of get the descendants of Benjamin Darling together. And I think my initial reaction when we walked in was that, you know, where are the other black families? I'd found it curious what happened to all of this mixed race.
Eventually, she looked past white, black, brown, and saw family.
And really, we're not so different after all.
Not different at all.
Charmaine Tripp, a well-known vocalist, actually won a Grammy for a recording with the rapper Eminem. And then in 2012, the Tripps and many other descendants went back for a curated exhibit about the history of that area to get that connection to an understanding of what it was like.
Curated by the historian you've seen in this piece. Her name is Kate McBride. She's helped a lot of descendants trace their lineage and learn more about Malaga, as we were just hearing.
In color and about color, Shayna shares contributions from a graphic novelist.
We've had examples of what, you know, harmony would look like in a community, and at every point we've had the powers that be come in and take it away.
A half hour of news at the top of the hour. News Center 5 at 4.
Downs & Reader is the candy store for wood. Whether you're a professional or an amateur, we bring over 60 species of hardwoods and softwoods to you. For your next project, the woods of the world are at Downs & Reader. Visit us at downsandreader.com.
From seasonal work to lasting rewards, get there with a job at UPS. UPS is now hiring team members to help deliver the holidays. Whether you're looking for part-time work or a full-time career, you'll get there with UPS. We're immediately seeking seasonal driver helpers to work through the holidays in or near their own neighborhood. No driver's license required. A great job and great opportunity delivered in one package by UPS. Apply today at upsjobs.com or text UPS Jobs to 33588.
Fios is not cable. We're wired differently. That means incredibly fast 150 meg internet for the holidays. So in the 3.7 seconds it takes Gary Watson to beat the local sled jump record,
Gary, fly.
His friend can download 13 versions of the perfect song. His sister can live stream it, while his mom downloads how to set a dislocated shoulder. Get 150 meg internet, TV, and phone for just $79.99 per month online for the first year. Cable can't offer that. Only Fios can.
Downs & Reader is a candy store for wood. Whether you're a professional or an amateur, we bring over 40 varieties of cabinet-grade plywoods to you. For your next project, the woods of the world are here at Downs & Reader. Visit us at downsandreader.com.
Mr. Scrooge, let's help some great kids this holiday season.
Donate a new unwrapped toy or gift card to the Home for Little Wanderers Big Wishes gift drive.
Malaga descendants are still coming to terms with their family history.
Meanwhile, others in Maine and elsewhere are making sure the story comes out from the shadows.
The little-known story of Malaga Island is a thorny one, rooted in our country's complicated history with race.
Coming from the South, it's like this happened in the North. People don't talk about it happening in New England. And so my first reaction was, this is absolutely amazing that this happened and that there was this community, this interracial community living on this island at the turn of the century that had been there for, 50 or so years.
These are stories Joel Christian Gill shares in his book, Strange Fruit, Uncelebrated Narratives from Black History.
I stumbled across the story of Box Brown, who was a slave who mailed himself in a box from Virginia to Philadelphia to escape from slavery to freedom.
In Strange Fruit, Gill hopes the mistakes of the past are never repeated.
As I was going out and showing people this story and telling them, people would tell me more stories. Like someone told me about Malaga Island. Had you heard about Malaga Island?
On a brave loader with timber headed for the North Main coast, they took on some rough seas.
I think the most important thing about this story quite frankly, is that it happened. That there was an ideal sort of community of people that were a mixed race group of people living in harmony and peace. We've had examples of what harmony would look like in a community, and at every point we've had the powers that be come in and take it away.
In an attempt to right the wrong, former Maine Governor John Baldacci issued a formal apology for Malaga. Then in 2012, 100 years after the eviction, Governor Paul LePage set up $300,000 in scholarship funds for descendants. Charmaine Tripp runs the scholarship.
With wealth and money comes education, and so we sort of felt like this was a great way to fill in the gaps of what possibly could have been passed on.
And now the town of Phippsburg is also making an effort. The town once turned its back on Malaga, insisting the nearby island was not part of its jurisdiction. Now Phippsburg is working to restore this home, which belonged to evicted Malaga resident John Murphy.
John Murphy did come from Malaga, and some of the parts of the house may have come over from Malaga. This looks typical of the homes on Malaga as well as along the West Point, Tabasco coast. And it's one of the few remaining houses that have not been altered in some way.
And this was for a family of 6?
For a family of 6.
Mary Chapin is a member of the Phippsburg Historic Preservation Commission.
The Murphy family, the John Murphy family, John and Pearl Murphy, lived here with 4 boys. There was not much else to do in the areas except play music, sing, get together, and this Murphy house was one of those places.
If all goes as planned, the house will be converted into a small museum, honoring the music and fishing traditions of the area, including Malaga. A community once erased, now honored by those who believe we must learn from Malaga's past.
I think especially today, as I watch the news and I hear about all these racial divisions in our nation, I look back and I think, how would the Malaga Island community actually respond to this? They would probably sit back and say, why are they fighting? We're living together. What's the problem? I think we could actually take a lot of lessons from them.
Somewhere off the main coast, at the mouth of the New Meadows River, there's an island.
The Phippsburg Historical Society began renovating that house we showed you the day after we were there on the island.
Right, and the hope is they're going to move it. They're going to turn it into a museum commemorating the history, really, of Malaga, and also the cultural and historical significance of fishing to the Phippsburg area as well.
That's right. The music of Malaga when Chronicle continues.
Little final note about the music you heard. One of the songs, The Story of Benjamin Darling Part 1, you heard mostly throughout the show tonight, is done by a local rock band called State Radio.
And they found it by digging for stories. They found this one, and thus the song was born. So good for them for finding this remote story that so few know about.
And we're told Part 2 is coming. Good night, everybody.